Tell me something unique about you that we would not see if we popped on your website.
So I don't know. I'm like, is this on my website? I'm not really sure. But I actually have an artist background, and I have my degree in graphic design, and I did it in a corporate setting for a long time, and then went out on my own. But one thing that always draws me back to it is like the actual like doing things with my hands. And right now, I'm really into watercolors and like kind of learning and testing out some things and like in so for my lunch break I'll like eat a lunch really fast and then like do a little watercolor because it just brings me so much peace and joy, and like helps turn my brain off. So I'm really into that right now.
That's so fun. I love that you can take your creativity into like the art world. So super
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
I wish I was good at art, but sometimes I find it therapeutic, even if it doesn't look great.
Well, let's be honest. Like it is definitely serves as like the therapy piece more so than, oh, like this is beautiful, I should sell it, or I'm no true like this is what I want to do kind of artist, but it definitely feels therapeutic to just like do things with my hands and like get away from the screen for a little while.
Yeah, totally get that. Love it. So tell me, what does pursuing goals God's way mean to you?
I love this question because like as a business owner, you like think about goals like clockwork, right? Like the new quarter's rolling around. We want to think about our goals for the next quarter or new year, new goals. What like it's always in the back of our brains. But what I've learned is that what it means to set goals and pursue them like God's way means that it has so much less to do with me and so much more to do with his plans. And so, in one word, I mean, I know I've just said a million words, but in one word, I would say loosely because I tend to, and maybe some people resonate with this, set a goal and then map out, I do the whole work backwards from the goal and like think through what the action steps are and what I need to do. And I'll plan it all out. And then when I start taking those steps, I tend to do it without God. I tend to just like get in a rhythm, get in my groove, and just like it's about me again instead of it being about where God wants to take it. And so I often have to like pause myself or he pauses for me and will humble me in some kind of fun way and we'll have to like realign, but it's so much more about like just really pausing and being present with him in it and just holding all of my plans and goals very loosely.
I love that. Yes, I've been humbled many times, so I totally understand.
Yeah.
If you're not if
Typically not fun.
No, because if we don't slow down or we don't do what he says, he will make sure we do it in some way. And so
Yeah.
better to do it on his prompting. But I love how you talk about loosely. I even think about that with my kids. Like, how do I hold you loosely because you're God's and not
Yeah.
mine, right? And so the same thing with our goals or business. It's that like allowing him to lead means that we can plan and we should plan. Planning is important, but we have to hold them loosely because it's not usually going to work out the way we plan exactly. It's going to work out the way he wants. And so I love that word. Thank you for sharing. So I know we're talking about sustainable scaling strategies to grow our businesses. Also, while honoring our well being, because I think it's really important to, like you were talking about, having that downtime, having that rest in a way. It's important for us to go after our goals big, but also know how to do it with flexibility and how to maintain our health and our like well-being, because otherwise we will not be good to anyone if we aren't doing that first. We will lead into burnout, which I have done before too. And so that sustainable growth is really, really important. And I know you talk a lot about working hard, like working smarter and not harder. Can you share some specific strategies or systems that you've implemented to help entrepreneurs scale their businesses without compromising their personal well-being? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I talked this kind of merges to the other two questions that you asked. I again have learned the hard way that we have to kind of force ourselves to pause. We have to force ourselves to take a beat and take a step back. And part of being able to make wise decisions in our business is taking a step back from it and being able to pause and not just be so focused on the one thing or the one goal, but looking at the bigger picture. Something that I have to implement in my own business, and I encourage others that I work with to implement in theirs, is we need to almost like put our goals through a vetting process of like, is this a vanity metric or is this values driven? And I would say that when we gear more towards the vanity side of this is the goal I want to hit for X, Y, and Z reasons, those are not bad goals, bad ideas, bad desires. Like that's not necessarily like something that you need to like completely cross off the list, right? But typically it feels more in alignment with us if we focus on the value side of the goals and then the vanity things come if God wants them to come. And we are like, we can accept it more if we don't reach, I'm just throwing numbers out there, but $100,000 by June or whatever. Everybody's journey is different. And I just really feel like if we were to focus more on the values, then we're naturally going to feel in more alignment with our integrity. And it's going to make our business more sustainable because we feel like we're in the right spot, even when we're facing the unknown, because that happens too.
That makes so much sense. And I love being values driven instead of like the vanity goals, like you were talking about, because we can't really predict how it's going to come together or when it's going to come together, but we can predict the things that we can do to help make things happen. And so looking at the values and making sure our business is aligned is so, so important. One thing I think about is like, what kind of an impact do I want to make? Like, why do I have this business? Yes, to make money. But if I didn't make any money, would I still want to be doing this? Would I still want this impact? Does it still align with the values? And I think you hit the nail on the head with that there. I know you said you've learned the hard way when it comes to building a business without burnout. So I'd love to hear, do you have an example or a story you can share about this situation, like how you were maybe not values driven or weren't values minded, and then how that shifted?
Oh yeah, I would love to share this. I feel like I love sharing all of my business flops because I feel like it just really I love when you're able to pull back the veil and be like, "Oh, this isn't as good," or the journey has not been easy, let's just say. Um I there's several moments where I feel like I could share. But one specifically is this was a couple years ago. I we were going through a really tough season personally, and we were like having to advocate for something for our child, and it was costing a lot of money. And there was just like we had to do a lot of things outside of the normal. It was like a medical situation, so it was like outside of the normal medical system. Insurance wasn't covering it, so like we needed some extra cash. And my focus was okay, I own my own business. I can set the goal and then figure out how to reach the goal and just go after it, right? And what I ended up doing, because the value wasn't the value was the money, right? The value was checking this box, meeting this need, and that's there's nothing wrong with that. But I there was something out of integrity with myself and my heart in the process. And so I booked all these clients and did all these things and was working so much. I mean, it took no time for me to have to like for me to have a moment of breakdown and be like, I can't do this. Like this is not sustainable for me. And I'm pretty quick to recognize when that's the case. Um and I think a lot of us are. We like it's in the back of our brains, like we know this is probably not sustainable, but maybe we're thinking, oh well, you know, we're just going to keep working hard. We're going to keep showing up. Like we kind of put it on the shoulders of our work ethic and we're like, we've got this. We're just going to keep trucking through. But something just felt really off. And the way that I typically describe it is like I felt like I was dying from the inside out. Like it was just something so, it didn't feel right. Like it didn't feel like that's where God wanted me to be. Because we know that when we are exactly where God wants us to be, we do feel like this unexplainable sense of peace. So we like me and my husband had a whole conversation about it. And yes, it was providing money, but at what cost? You know, we have to consider what the cost of pushing ourselves too hard or setting that goal that's going to put us in a situation that's not good for us, not good for our well-being, not good for our family. We like put ourselves in a situation of being the sacrifice of it when not that's not even biblical for us to do that, right? It's like Jesus was that. So we have to really consider what is most important back to that value system, because if we don't and we get sucked into these like ideas of what we think is needed and it just feels black and white and I'm just going to go for it, then we're kind of missing the other piece that connects with who we are as people and who we were created to be. And I want to also mention that like that situation for me was it was clear I was burnt out very quickly. But sometimes situations will be a little bit different. And it's what I like to call secret burnout because you maybe enjoy what you're doing and you're like, yes, this feels good. Like I like it. I feel like I'm in a groove. But at the end of the day, there's just still something in you that you're a little bit more drained than you should be, or you're a little bit more uncertain about some things or feeling anxious about some things. And you're just like not quite sure if you're where you're supposed to be, but things keep happening and you're just like, okay, I'm just going to keep going, going, going. And so you're like on the fast track to burnout, or you're feeling that burnout, but you're trying to trick yourself out of it. So it's like your brain's trying to reconcile how you're feeling with like all the things that you know about how you operate and what's best for you. And anyway, I think that that's worth mentioning too, that it's not always a clear identifiable I'm in burnout. Sometimes it's like a little idea, a little thought that's like, is this right? You know?
Yeah, I love that you addressed a secret burnout because I think sometimes we get so excited about what we're doing and we're so passionate about it that we could do it for days on end. I mean, I feel that way with my business a lot when I'm helping others and I see their successes. But then if we aren't taking that Sabbath day or like the rest day, or if we're not like taking care of ourselves, or if we're not having quote unquote balance with the rest of our life, then we could lead into that burnout and not even know we're headed that direction. So secret burnout, I've never heard it called that. And I really like the idea of recognizing that. So, can you tell me now? This is probably going to be a twofold question, but what are some common signs for us to look at for going on the path of burnout? And maybe even because you said we were talking about secret burnout and how we might not be able to identify it as well, if there's a way to kind of look for that as we're working.
I would recommend that people really be on the alert and aware of how their body feels. Like if they are working on something or they're working super hard or they like might have a little twinge of maybe I have an unhealthy relationship with this, or maybe like, am I too excited about this? Am I working on the right thing? And they just like feel like a sense of anxiety or something. I feel like, or lack of peace. I feel like we have to pay attention to those things. So I would say, like, listen to yourself first. This also kind of ties into the well being piece because we no, like we are the only ones who know what our body feels. And so we just really have to be the advocate for that and pay attention to those things. In addition to that, if you're feeling like a little chaotic in your business, if you're feeling like everything's just kind of moving around you and you're going through the motions and you're just doing, 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 it might be worth taking a pause, taking a step back, and looking at everything you're spending your time and your energy on and making sure that it aligns with what you need to be doing. Um, if you have a team and you are doing the majority of the work, but you've hired people to do it, typically I hear a lot of people saying, well, it's too much work to train them on this person or this client. Like I know all of that information. And what that does, that belief, it keeps everything in our box. It keeps everything on our list. And that's not healthy. Like if we've hired someone and we're spending money to invest in these people, but we're like holding everything back and like keeping it to ourselves, that's not a wise decision. And I think in our gut, we know that, but we just don't know how to get out of that limited mindset and that block to take the next step forward. But that's definitely one of the things that I would look out for as well. Um, One thing I mentioned earlier about my experience was like I felt like I was dying from the inside out, which sounds so dramatic, I realize. But if you're feeling like what you're doing is not um, in alignment with what you should be doing. I don't know how else to describe that, but you know when you feel like this is just draining me, like this is not what I should be doing. And sometimes that's not like a complete left hand turn. Sometimes that's like it's a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. It could be something that looks good from the outside, but is not actually where we should be spending our time and our energy. And then for secret burnout, I think that the best way for us to be aware of this is to pause and really kind of reflect in what our gut's telling us. And I think that there's a lot to say for again how our body feels when we're working towards something or going through a hard season in business and really identifying where it is not feeling right. And then being able to make small adjustments to kind of get ourselves out of that.
That makes a lot of sense. I definitely, even just the other day, looked at my business, kind of like you were talking about what's serving its purpose, what's not, and started kind of getting rid of some of the tasks that I had that I was just doing because I thought I needed to be doing it. And I think that's really important for us to evaluate periodically what's working, what's not, what do I need to add, what can I take off my plate. And I'm thinking so I want to talk about as a solopreneur or solopreneur with maybe one person on your team, and then also as with a team. So, like, as a solopreneur, maybe someone just getting started who has a business, who's ready to scale it, wants to make sure that everything is kind of in burnout proof mode, if you want call it that. Is there anything on the back end that you would highly recommend somebody do or organize in order to just have kind of like that organized mind going forward, especially as like thinking about what should I be doing, what shouldn't I be doing, and those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think it's good to, I mean, it'd be great if we had the capacity to do it like once a month, but sometimes that's like not enough time to sometimes we need to kind of create just a good rhythm like quarterly. Cuz I would say like in my mind I'm like, "Oh, well, once a month sounds great, but that's not really practical for me." So, I would say every quarter having like a touch base with yourself. Like ask yourself a couple of questions and you could ask yourself, what's on my plate? What has to be on my plate? What can I delegate? Like just some questions of what am I spending my time in? What feels good? What feels right? What doesn't? What has been harder than it should have been? Where is my mind spiraling? Where am I feeling anxiety? Like, you don't have to ask yourself all of these questions, but choose the ones that align most with you as a person and just give yourself the space to process through it so that you can make those decisions. What our Achilles heel is is that we get so busy or maybe we are maybe we have families, maybe we have other jobs, maybe we have side hustles, maybe we have like all these other things happening, maybe we have a sick family member that we're caretakers for. We all have a million things going on, and so we just naturally skip from thing to thing to thing to thing, and we don't slow down long enough for us to be able to gift ourselves with that moment of shedding what doesn't need to be on our plate.
Yeah, that makes sense. And about with a team, whether you have a small team, one or two people helping, or a team of 10 plus. I know that sometimes we struggle with delegating because it's like, well, I don't know if they'll do it the way I want, or, just a lot of things that go through our minds. So, what advice do you have for business owners to effectively actually empower their teams to do the work and also to create streamlined systems that support the growth that they're wanting?
Yeah, that's such a good question. My biggest piece of advice is to create a team that doesn't depend on you. That you trust them and they have the ability to own their role, to own that part of the business. Every business is different. Some businesses thrive by creating these different roles and then attaching multiple roles to one person. And that is totally okay. Whereas other ones say like this person is this role. It doesn't really matter which side of the spectrum you fall on, but giving that person permission to own that role or those roles in its entirety is going to, one, communicate that you trust them. And if you don't trust them, then we're having a completely different conversation. But if it communicates that you trust them, it communicates that they're capable, it communicates that you believe in them, and then they feel empowered to do the thing and to own it in completion. And I read this book called, oh my goodness, I'm going to space on it right now. Oh, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. Great book. So, so good. There's a lot in that book that we apply when we work with people. But one thing that he said is like, give your team member like a budget to solve a problem. Like it doesn't have to be a huge budget. It could be 20 bucks. I don't know. But depending on what you do, if there's a problem, have them come up with a solution. Give you two options, the solution that they think is best and another solution. And so they've already identified the problem, come up with a couple of solutions, and given you what they think is the best solution based off of that role or based off of that problem. And then they're able, like, if they bring it to you and you want to be a part of that decision making process, you totally can be. There's nothing wrong with that. And maybe you collaborate with them in that moment, but then that's all you have to do, and then they can carry the solution through. But that only happens when we trust our team and when we give them the permission to own what they do.
That's huge. And I've been on teams on both sides where it's been like micromanager, hate being on teams like that because I'm like, I just feel like I'm being scrutinized at every corner. When I'm empowered to just do the thing because they trust that I'm capable, they trust that I will do a great job, it makes it so much more fun. And so I love that you're talking about like that empowerment of your team.
Yes, and, like, let's say that they come to the table or they have a solution, but the solution didn't go the way that it planned, or it goes sour or something bad happens where you're like, should I" in our minds, sometimes we question, "Should I have given that to them? Should I have done more in that situation or taken over more in that situation?" But I really wanna challenge us not to go down that route and instead collaborate with that person, sit down, have them share what happened, what they feel like could have been different, and support them in processing that. Because you can give your feedback there. You can say, I think that this could have been a good option. What do you think? But it needs to be a collaborative effort because otherwise you're taking away some of that trust and you're taking away some of that belief that you have in them, and they're going to feel that. Whether you say it or not, or you take away some responsibility or not, they're going to feel that you're questioning if they're capable. And that is going to create confusion and anxiety on your team that just doesn't have to be there. If we just sit down and have the conversation with them about, you know, I might would have liked to have seen this, but here's why. And what do you think about that? And make it a collaborative conversation. Everyone still feels empowered and on the same page. And that is what creates a really peaceful working environment.
So true. And having that openness and that conversation, I think empowers them to be able to do things more hands off instead of
Yes.
like feeling like they have to ask you a question every second of the day. So it gives you a little bit more freedom to do what you're supposed to do in your business.
Yeah, it builds more trust with them. And whether I mean, it's hard for us to really think that in the moment when we're like stressed about the outcome of the situation, but like that's the outcome is when you really lean into the values and what's most important. These things do happen and the bonds will continue to come together and people will work together harmoniously, and it's a really good thing when we can sit down and have those conversations.
Yeah, so true. So, do you have any other strategies or tips for sustainable growth that you want to share that we haven't talked about yet?
Um, One thing that I really try to push, not, I don't know if push is the right word, but I really try to focus on in everything with working with business owners is conflict is really, really valuable. And if you're feeling like there is some element where we are here, but we need to be here, that's really what conflict is that we are not where we need to be. Um, and there's like this gap between the two places. And sometimes one person's on this side and one person's on this side. And so the gap is the relationship, right? Or the trust or the understanding or the communication. And I really encourage people to lean into the conflict and figure out how to understand, seek to understand. We're not always going to understand other people and how they operate. We don't know their background, their stories, their experiences in totality. So it's impossible for us to completely understand somebody else. But if we seek to understand them in this situation and this conflict, then we are honoring them, whether or not they are, right or wrong, or have done you wrong, or, have done something that is negatively impacting your organization or whatever. Um, when we're able to honor them, we're also honoring ourselves by having the conversation. And I call this the honor everyone in the room approach. And it's something that I have a personal experience with, and had like a really hard conversation in a situation that felt really impossible. But I like pressed into scripture before I did it. And I found a Bible verse that I believe it's First Peter. Hold on, I have a note. See if I can find it. First Peter 2:17 maybe. And it says, "Honor everyone." I'm not quoting it, so
All
everybody
good.
should go to the verse. But honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the emperor. And different versions have different ways of saying it. But to me, what that communicated was it's possible to approach every conversation, whether it be with leadership, whether it be with someone who, maybe isn't a leader, but they could smash your name on Facebook if they wanted to, or an angry customer, or like it could be anybody. But that verse is telling us that we honor people, we love people, we fear God. That's like a big piece of this too, of if we know we're supposed to have the conversation and we're putting it off, then like obviously we need to fear God, we need to respect and be able to say, okay, I know I have to do this because this is where God is leading me. Um, but to honor the emperor, the that part of it to me says even if someone, I think about our government, even if you don't agree with someone or you're not on the same page or you don't fully understand them, you can still honor them. And I think that a lot of times we approach conflict and these types of conversations with this is what I need to get out. This is what I need to communicate. And they come in with this is what I need to communicate. And the two just clash together and there's no resolution because somebody's got to give in those types of situations. And that's not always what needs to happen either. But if you honor that person honors you, and you guys can communicate clearly, sometimes just seeking to understand is the outcome because in that moment people feel loved, people feel seen, and that is exactly what the business world and any type of conflict, any two people who are in a conflict together, that's what that situation needs the most.
I love that you went there because I just think about even just business in itself, like, or life. God doesn't promise us an easy life. He doesn't promise us an easy business either, right? We're going to have struggles, we're going to have failures. We're also going to need to have hard conversations. But I love how you changed the mindset of, oh my gosh, I have to have this conversation. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Or what am I going to say? To honor everyone in the room. If you go with that approach, it's like, it's more that empowering approach. Like, let's see how we can work together and how we can work this out rather than feeling like it's going to be like crazy. I don't know about this. I don't want to have this conversation,
Yeah.
So I love that approach. And I love how you brought the scripture into it to say, that's what we're doing. We're honoring everyone in the room.
Yeah.
So very cool. This has been such an awesome conversation, Jillian. I'm so glad I popped you on here because there's so much. I mean, I could talk to you all day about this. I think so.
I think so too. I would enjoy that.
So much to talk about. And I think our well-being is so important as we grow and scale our businesses, and we want them to be sustainable. We want them for the long run. And so I very much appreciate you